Hello and welcome to The Birth of a New Dimension. My name is Aurora, and I named this show Birth of a New Dimension in conjunction with a painting of expression of visual artwork that I created that depicts the events that we are currently experiencing. This new dimension that we are as a collective, like as a collective of humanity and planetary consciousness and cosmic consciousness, like the consciousness of the source that has been refracted or spread out over this entire large area of time. We are all collectively giving birth to this new reality. So we're both like the parent and the little infant baby that is trying to be squeezed through a very narrow portal under great duress. And the new dimension that we're coming into is one that is made of a new form of matter. Brief pause. So up until this point, we have been laboring under the delusion that matter and energy are actually two separate phenomena of the physical world. And this fiction has been taught to us in conjunction with the fiction that we are a separated or individuated ego consciousness that is separate from our context. And just like in the development of a fetus in the womb, that little tiny developing entity goes through all the different stages of evolutionary biology. Like at one point, it looks like a one-celled animal. Then it looks like a tiny tadpole. Then it starts to look like an amphibian. And, right before little babies are born, they even look a lot like a chimpanzee. And when they're born prematurely, sometimes they even have extra hair on their face that makes them look a lot like a little tiny baby monkey. But mostly if they're born full to term, then that hair on their face goes away and then they come out looking like a human. So the whole idea behind that is that, I'm not the first person that said that as the fetus or, embryo or tiny unborn child is developing in the womb, that they go through all of these different stages of evolutionary biology. And these stages are very similar to stages of consciousness or psychological development and emotional development and perception that we experience outside of the womb. Where we begin, we are like this numinous, connected little tiny infant. We're not separate from the cosmos, but we eventually, over the first couple of years of our life, get installed into our software, our organic hardware rather. It get installed into your brain, that's your hardware, the consciousness, the idea that you are an ego, like this is your name. This is like a miracle that you learn this when you're a little tiny child. You learn this is your name and you answer to that no longer abstract collection of sounds. And you start to identify with that as your identity, and also creating a sense of the boundary of your epidermis. Like the epidermis is how we sense with our tactile sense. If I can feel it with my tactile sense, it's a part of me. But if I can't feel it with that tactile sense, I define it as quote unquote not me. And so little infants, why they go around nibbling on their own toes, and then they pick up a toy and they nibble on the toy and they're like, okay, that one I felt, that one I didn't feel. These are definitely two different things. And then we also begin to make the distinction between one's self as an individual and other human beings or other living beings. Like you begin to distinguish and delineate between yourself and your mommy or yourself and your daddy. And that sense of separation from family and from environment continues into adulthood, where at a certain point we develop the fiction that this is my name, this is who I am, this is where I live, and I'm only responsible for the things that are quote unquote inside of the boundary of my epidermis. But that is not the end of the journey. That is just one level of development, and we need to transcend the limitations of that level to get to the next level. And that is what we're doing as we are collectively giving birth. So this transcendence is an overcoming of that membrane. And the way that we do it, or that it is possible to do it, is through this maneuver that I invented called the flying rainbow lasagna. And if you are new to my broadcasts, welcome. I'm so happy that you're tuning in and exposing yourself to these wonderful ideas. If you're a long-term listener, thank you for tuning in all the time and lasagnifying yourself, because the flying rainbow lasagna is not just a noun like the descriptor for a shape. It is also a verb. It is an activity that one can perform any place where there is a torus or toroid or donut shape. You can transform it into a flying rainbow lasagna, which would be considered a type of hypertorus or a higher dimensional torus shape. So if you speak math, what cube is to tesseract, torus is to flying rainbow lasagna. And flying rainbow lasagna is also not a static shape. Much like a tesseract, it is best described with a moving animation or, something that shows the multidimensional qualities of this shape, because it is not just a three-dimensional shape, it's a shape that is moving through time. So I use the analogy, forgive me if these are repetitive for long-term listeners, but it's like looking at a multiple exposure of a person throwing a baseball, and it might look like they're like an ancient Hindu deity with 1,000 arms, but we know intellectually they don't have 1,000 arms. It's one arm that is moving through time and being perceived in like time lapse. So when you look at the flying rainbow lasagna, please understand that each flange or lobe or petal shape is like one moment. And this is all an overlay or a composite image that is made by the collection of many moments strung together. It's an oscillation. And okay, so if you're new, check out a picture or a visual representation of the flying rainbow lasagna. There's one on the UCY.TV banner, the homepage for Birth of a New Dimension. There's one basically on any of my social media. It's my profile picture. Go to flyingrainbowlasagna.com. You can see plenty of images of it there. You can also go to YouTube and check out the animation conception of the flying rainbow lasagna. And I steer people to that often because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, an animation is worth a billion words, and it really helps you to understand how the end result, flying rainbow lasagna shape, happens when we take the torus shape and begin to vibrate it or move it up and down or make it dance in a higher dimensional context. So your DNA is always dancing. Even though the simplified high school lessons of science lessons might have given you like a limited view of what DNA was, because mostly at a simplistic level it is just taught that DNA is like X-shaped chromosome, and that is only truthful for a fraction of the cell's lifespan. That for the greater extent of, or greater proportion of the life of a cell, within the interior of the nucleus, the DNA is unfurled or unwoven, or like imagine a crocheted sweater that gets all of the loops are pulled out so that it's now just a giant spool of yarn. And that's called chromatin. And that is how your DNA is formulated for most of the lifespan of the cell. It could be years, it could be 60 years, if in the case of like a spinal cell or something like a nerve cell that lasts for 60 years. So during the time that that crochet is unfurled, it's not just sitting there, it's dancing, it's vibrating, it does loop-de-loops, it ties itself in knots, it unties itself. There are special enzymes that allow it to snip out portions of itself, untwist itself, and that is basically how the book of you gets written. It's how your blueprints get accessed, because they are so tightly coiled most of the time that we have to release that energy by snipping with little enzymes and allowing certain portions to be unrolled. So this is the idea that just because something is written into your genetic code as an aspect of potential, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be expressed as proteins or physical behaviors or diseases or levels of health. That there is this process of unlocking or accessing the blueprints of your DNA, and that not only creates the shape of your body, it also creates the experiences as you move through the time field. Because DNA is also the integument that ties together your awareness, like the needle of your awareness that is playing the song of your life on the record, like on an old-fashioned record player, how you get from moment to moment. Because my body of 135 is not the same as my body of 136 or the body that I will wear at 137. you and me, we are all doing this jump. We transfer our consciousness from body to body, moment to moment. It happens at the Planck length, the tiniest slice of time that we can slice time into and still define it as time. So it's like train cars of reality. I also use that analogy, that we are transferring our consciousness from train car to train car, moment to moment, and that what does that transfer, or what ties everything together, that's what the integumentary system is your DNA. That your genes are not just the blueprints for the color of your eyes and shape of your nose and, length of your toes. That your DNA are also the physical conduits that tie you to moments in time or experiences submerged within time. So once we begin to understand that, we understand how profound it is if someone starts messing with your DNA, because they're not just changing the expression of your physical proteins, color of your eye, color of your hair, attached earlobes or epicanthic eye folds. They are also beginning to affect your trajectory through time. And I'll get into a little bit of this now. This is what I describe or call or label dark magic. It is actually a form of non-terrestrial technology. If you're new to my broadcasts, I'll introduce myself. I am a galactic walk-in. And I say that in order to give some amount of credence to what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about because I come from up here, so please, listen to my firsthand reportage, that there are various different types of space races or various different species, and some of whom are highly empowered, perfected, spiritual super beings. And those beings, I'm starting at the top in my description this week, those beings are the best, and they're the ones that you absolutely would wish to interact with, collaborate with, have conversations with, make artwork with. They don't require any amount of technology. Everything that they do is based completely in the energy known as unconditional love. I'm not sitting at my piano. I'm sitting here trying to get some sunlight on a very cloudy day over here in front of my garden window. But if I were at my piano, I would play an A note or, a nice little note, and I would say, unconditional love is like a tone, like la, a tone. And it is the music that we make when we are moving through time at exactly the right rate. So when we are not being inhibited by the sandbags, the baggage of the past weighing us down, and when we are not reaching forward, striving in anxiety, wondering about what's going to happen next, we are submerged fully within the profundity of the present moment now, and we create a tone. La la la, I am presenting love. And that's the tone that we're supposed to make as we move through time. However, the installed operating system, known as the human mind, is a hacked operating system, first of all. Means you did not install it, and you do not get to control who accesses your thoughts and your body and your time field as a result of this. But it is this human mind that makes us either think about the past or grasp forward into the future, and that disperses our consciousness instead of focusing our consciousness into a laser-like beam of awareness that we have completely condensed onto this one moment of the now. Instead, the human mind, which is distorted, disperses or refracts or spreads out that beautiful beam of consciousness into the events of the past and the events of the future, and it makes a person very fragmented. And it takes away a lot of the power of your consciousness. And if you've ever had an experience of either ingesting a psychedelic entheogen or having a near-death experience, like a near-miss car accident, all of these things really change one's perception of time. Like the amount of time that you can perceive in a minute, the idea that time slows down in a moment of crisis, in a moment of health crisis, under great duress, or sometimes not under duress, sometimes when a person is having a wonderful euphoric experience of, having ingested some psychedelic, some psilocybin mushroom or something like that, that also distorts one's experience of time. So the basics of the space species I don't intend to make just more duality, but I divide it up into roughly two groups: the wonderful spirit beings that do not require any technological accoutrements, let's call it, in order to accomplish what they need to accomplish. So like if we use a human as an example, a human is born, you're wearing your birthday suit, you pretty much have everything that you need, or the potential for everything that you need within that birthday suit. You didn't have to come here wearing like a protective aluminum space suit to keep out the atmosphere, with cans of oxygen that you could breathe, and with food in toothpaste tubes that you could squeeze for like the next 50 or 60 or 100 years while you lived on the surface of this planet. No, no, no. You came here with your physicality, and also with your consciousness, and with your spirit, and with your heart and your energy centers, and with the capacity to love. And that means in this time and place to ingest resources from the outer world, like the capacity to ingest milk and solid food and build that into a larger adult-sized body. That all requires love. So there are beings that exist in the physical realm that only have come into physicality on the bridge of love. And then there are beings that came into physicality by choosing their own entry method. So this is big also because a lot of them are very unhappy and they're like, wah, 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 poor me, pity me. But you can't, because the truth is they chose this for themselves. So it's like there's a great conductor that tells everybody when it's time to play your instrument. And your instrument is your body, and playing your instrument is being alive in the cosmic symphony. And if you listen to the conductor says like, tap, 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 let me tap on something. It is now time for you to go down into the physicality and be born, right? But these beings did not listen to the great conductor. They were like, oh yeah, screw you, conductor. We are going to build cyborgs. We're going to build like technology, something that is not alive, a dead, inert system that we can use in order to contain our consciousness in the physical realm. And we're going to do it because we don't want to be part of the network of consciousness that is known as unconditional love. So this is like a big experiment that was undertaken eons ago. And I bring it up as cosmic backstory. And also, I have a whole like series of classes that's all about this. I have lessons for full spectrum humans that teaches all about your physical and non-physical anatomy and the basic structure of the cosmos and the proportions. And I have small standalone classes, and this one is galactic history. Usually I make people go through the whole 5-month-long class before we get to galactic history, because it's like get together enough unconditional love and momentum and emotional fortitude in order to look at these emotionally disturbing, dark topics. However, that's like, since I've been doing this since 2013, humanity is now not only ready for all of this information, like no more sugarcoating, we literally don't have time. We are giving birth. What was 4 years ago, what was appropriate 4 years ago, like, take some Lamaze classes and learn some deep breathing and yoga exercises. Like, that was right when you were just at the beginning of this pregnancy. But now you really need the crash course of what is going on in your body and what is happening, because the baby's head is literally coming out from the, birth opening right now. So you all need to know about the context within which you are operating right now, because these users of technology, although they reduced human consciousness between 10 and 20,000 years ago when they invaded this world, but they've been hard at work since they invaded that long time ago. They've been busy setting up our money system and our banking system and our religious system and our government structure. Like these users of technology basically came to this world. Prior to that invasion, there were no intermediaries between the humans that lived on Earth and pure divinity. Like everybody here was a divine, connected, miniature, co-creative god or goddess. And the invasion that happened was an invasion on the genetic level, and it was exactly like changing a radio broadcast, like an old-fashioned, they used to have like these round knobs inside of cars to change the radio station. if you turn the knob just a little bit, it's like you drift away from the station you're supposed to be on, and you might even hear voices coming from a totally different radio station. That is exactly what happened genetically about 10 or 20,000 years ago. The big, giant radio station knob of the broadcast of reality that humanity is listening to got changed. And you got changed from listening to God, like the pure divine source of intelligence and organizational principle that is at large in the cosmos, the emanator that emanated us, and began listening to these lower level miscreants, the ones that chose to emanate themselves not on a bridge of love, and they purport to be deities. This is the big challenge. Just gotta move my chair here. That they are imposters, or small g gods, not capital letter G God, and that for all of human history, humans have been genetically constrained, like your mind on a leash. The way a dog is on a leash, your minds are on a leash. And in the same way that domesticated dogs have been programmed to worship and adore their human masters, humans have been programmed to worship and adore their non-terrestrial overlords of consciousness, the masters that have put your minds on a leash. These are the masters that have created the hacked operating system and installed it in each of our minds as a tiny infant child, known as the human mind. So the human mind was not created for your convenience. It was created for the convenience of the hackers that want to be able to access your thoughts and your emotions and your trajectory through time whenever they want to. And that's the big one. Because your thoughts, these are like the steering wheel. You know, if you're like a vehicle and you are moving down a road, your thoughts are what determine, are you going to drive down the road where you're supposed to go? Are you going to veer off, into a ditch, or, drive into a tree and explode horribly into flames? That the capacity to control your thoughts has everything to do with whether you will successfully navigate the time field or whether you will, crash into the membrane of death. So these occupiers of the interstices, the beings that live in this membrane that separates worlds, and the membrane could be defined as a fourth dimensional or lower astral realm. It is the place where you go to when you go into dreaming. It is the place where the residue, like the ghostly residue of a person that has already died, exists. The idea is you are supposed to, when you die, you're supposed to go into that realm and pass through it the same way that you would pass through like a hallway or something like that. But there are squatters that have set themselves up in this hallway, and they set themselves up so many thousands of years ago. It's literally before human history, before human culture even was created, and they have their whole own sophisticated civilization and empire built in the realm between worlds, which it's supposed to be a hallway or a transit space between getting from room to room, but instead they have been trapped there for so long that they are well entrenched. And this is, you could call it hell. It is the lower astral realm. And the beings that occupy that realm are having an influence on the beings that are alive and that have bodies and that eat physical food. The beings that occupy the membranes, they don't have the capacity, they don't have a body anymore. They don't have the capacity to eat love. If they could eat love, they wouldn't have to be like a parasite or a scavenger, sucking energy off of the living, and they would be able to also ingest energy that is not degraded. Like you can emit love, that beautiful tone, as you're moving through time with your mind perfectly aligned with higher consciousness. If these beings could eat love, they would be like, oh, I'm going to eat that wonderful love broadcast. But they can't. They can only eat a degraded, diminished version of love energy, which is more like sadness, anger, grief, these denser emotions that exist more at the level of the mammalian emotions. It's not unconditional love. It is, denser attraction, revulsion, and all of the things that make people's passions go, that motivate them. So those are all of the emotions that unconditional love is degraded into in order to feed these interdimensional overlords. So, and those interdimensional overlords, they are practicing what I call dark magic, but is really a form of technology. So I said I didn't want to make this more about duality, but I'm dividing up the space races very roughly into two different camps. The ones that I initially described, pure spirit beings, very sophisticated, very refined, higher consciousness beings who don't need any technology. They don't need anything that is not natural. They only use what is naturally occurring to achieve their great feats of consciousness. And contrast that with beings that require technology in order to do what they want to do. So if they want to transport themselves from planet A to planet B, they use a clank metal spaceship, right? They don't just teleport themselves from one place to another or bend and fold time and space and create a portal and step through a portal. It's a different level of being. And you, as a human on the surface of Earth right now, might be unduly impressed if you were exposed to this extraterrestrial technology that runs on dark magic, because literally it's powerful enough to move planets. Like, you could put a planet under warp drive and be like, let's move Jupiter out of its orbit and, move it over here. Or you could move moons. You could do a lot of rearranging the furniture, but it's not that impressive. It's just like if you have a bulldozer and you are, an indigenous person, you see a bulldozer for the first time, you're like, wow, that can move a lot of earth. I'm so impressed. But then if you're like, well, wait, it only works if it belches out smoke, and it only works if you put in this petrochemical, and this all comes from horrible pollution, then you're like, wait, I'm not that impressed. So if you really knew what was powering these giant star cruisers or these giant planet-moving vehicles, you'd be horrified, because they are all powered under victimization or rape and murder and the distortion and hijacking of the free and fully functioning DNA of alive organisms. So DNA, it's supposed to be like an exploratory art project that develops into new ideas and new formats and creates new levels of complexity. And there are some beings that decide they want to limit the free expression of DNA. It's like saying, no, I'm not going to let you run your program to its final conclusion and, find out what happens in the end. I'm going to say you're only allowed to think these thoughts or have these actions or have these experiences. I'm going to limit the functioning and expression of DNA. And those are the beings, by the way, that installed the human operating system that is hacked, that created the social structures, economic and religious structures on Earth. I mean, their agenda is to prevent DNA or DNA-using organisms from, let's say, being too uppity, from getting too much of your own power, because the DNA is an incredibly empowering item. It's like your connection to time. So the way that these users of dark magic distort the time field is a living three-dimensional embroidery, and all of the threads transfer consciousness just like wires transfer electrons in a giant machine, okay? And if you cut the threads, then the entire sweater of the embroidery of reality begins to fray, and it can unwind if you cut enough of it. So what the dark magicians do is cutting a thread. This is like ending a life. It's very similar to the ancient Greek three goddesses, the description of the three fates, that one wove the thread of life, one measured the thread of life, and one cut the thread of life. These are very descriptive, beautiful allegories, so we can understand that this is what is going on in the time field. And it's supposed to be like threads make up an embroidery, that there's an overarching picture that occurs when we look at the way all of these threads or events tie together. Like when you experience a synchronicity, it's because you are perfectly embedded into this three-dimensional time embroidery. Your thread meets with another person's thread and creates this magical event and you say, look at that. For a moment, you recognize, I am part of a larger picture. And ideally, we are supposed to experience those synchronistic events all the time. If we are true virtuosos of the time field, we are playing the instruments of our bodies perfectly, and so is everyone around us, and so is our environment, like our ecosystem and our context and the planet itself. And that means that we would have non-stop synchronicities, like you say the words coming out of your mouth that I was literally just thinking, or, I think I really want a sandwich just as you walk by with a beautiful sandwich on a tray and hand it to me. I was speaking about this in a conversation on Facebook, and someone used that exact example that she made a sandwich for her son and brought it up the stairs to him just as he was coming down the stairs to ask her for something to eat. And so these are like these winks or nods from the cosmos that tells us, hey, you're on the right path, you're doing the right thing. But really, we're always supposed to be living like that. It's like we're not just supposed to be musicians who manage to play on the beat, miraculously, like once in a blue moon. We're supposed to always be playing on the beat, and we're always supposed to be integrating our notes harmonically so that we sound good together. And sounding good together is not just you and me and all of the other humans. It's you, me, all the other humans, all the cats and dogs and domesticated animals, all the microbes, all the wild animals, all the plants, all the fungi and microbes that live on the surface of our face and, in our intestinal tract. It's a giant cosmic symphony, and we all need to get our bodies in tune, get our instruments in tune, and be playing attentively, be attentive to one another's needs as a fellow musician. Like, don't swamp the other people that are trying to play their little delicate notes. Well, the dark magicians are absolutely horrible musicians. Not only do they have a terrible ear, like they are tone deaf, they cannot tell, they choose not to listen to the beat, they are musically illiterate, and they totally do not care about you little high piccolos, like trying to play your high notes in the background. They are just swamping you with their loud, aggressive, out-of-tune music. And so the dark magicians, what they do is they distort people's trajectory through time. If you were, for example, destined to, be a great leader, whatever, something that requires a lot of confidence. But let's say instead of having that time trajectory, as a child, you are sexually abused, and that takes away that sense of inner confidence and diminishes you and diminishes your self-expression. And instead you become, an introverted person that isolates themselves from society. That we can actually calculate the difference in trajectory. Like if you're like a baseball flying on a trajectory and some outside force acts upon you as a particle, then we can say you used to be going on this path, now you're going on this path. Let's calculate the difference between these two paths. And the difference between those two paths adds up to the amount of energy that has been siphoned off from the time field. Like that joy, that inner strength, that ability to, be a leader, that energy that you had got siphoned off through the act of abuse. It fractures the time field and puts a person in a new trajectory that is not their intended trajectory. And this is systemic throughout our whole entire society. It's a very dark topic, and it is now coming out much more. The positive news is that investigations such as the citizens' investigation known as Pizzagate or Pedogate. I try to keep these broadcasts not too topical, but this really matters because this has been within the past 4 or 5 months. Evidence of high-level government officials, banking officials, religious officials engaging in ritual abuse, like the systemic abuse of children in order to distort their trajectory through time. This is how the dark magicians control the time field. So a better way of saying it is like if you're a dark magician and you want to cast a spell, quote unquote, you just rearranging my chair here. Let's say you want to make something happen. In order to make something happen, you need energy. Just like if you wanted to, in the regular world of the economy and society, if you wanted to start a new project, you need money. Like, you got to hire people. Like, you got to have money. Even if you're going to work on the project yourself, you need resources. You need a place to do it. Like, I'm thinking about anything. If you wanted to paint a large mural, like, you're going to have to get a wall. You're going to have to get some paint. You're going to have to get some ladders. To make anything happen, you need money. You need financial backing. So in order to distort the time field or make anything happen in time, you need that energy of consciousness. And you and me, we are organic, biological, beautiful, human beings. We have abundant consciousness. We have all of this beautiful life force energy. That's the benefit of being in a physical body. And what these dark magicians, they do not have access to love and, the life force energy. So they siphon it off and they hijack their victims. And I don't like to use the word victim because it is so disempowering, but there's the subjects of abuse, the beings who are abused are, they have that energy taken away from them. And in more of this information is coming to light now. So it is giving more people who are experiencers of abuse like a free license to be able to speak about it, because part of this is that it is occult. Occult meaning it's hidden. It derives a great deal of its power from being behind the scenes. So these rapes and, systemic abuse within families, these things only go on because the victims are silenced. They are bound and not able to fully speak about their experience. So those spells, those binding spells, are all being diminished. And now it is possible to bring this information to light. This is literally ending an empire of dark magic that has existed for, over 10,000 years. So a dark magician who wants to get something done, first of all, we have to look to motivation, like the definition, dark magician. Why is one person a dark magician? Because they are deriving their motivations from their ego, not from a sense of being connected to a universal or a cosmic, impersonal, divine source. That would be like being connected to the great composer that says, these are what the notes that you're going to play. I'm not on my piano, but C, D, A. These are the notes that you're supposed to play. And the dark magician is acting from their own ego, their own self-constructed narrative idea, sense of self. And they say, oh, I know that the cosmic directive is to play these 3 notes, but instead I want to play these notes instead. So it's like being totally insensitive to the music of the cosmos and what is supposed to be going on, and being totally self-centered on your own personal fulfillment at the expense of everybody else. So in, an example from the human realm, it would be like saying, if you had a personal desire, like I have a personal desire to be very wealthy at the expense of everyone else. Like, I just want to be a billionaire with my giant mansion, and I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I don't care how many other people have to be killed or squashed or raped in order to accomplish this. Like, this is what a dark magician does. They are not powerful. Like, a person who is really connected to unconditional love is truly and profoundly powerful. Powerful in the sense of being like a real genius artist. That I really think musicians like John Coltrane and Mozart, these, wonderful musicians, I really feel that the genius of them is that they were connected to something way beyond the limitations of what we call human, and that this larger divine something was acting through their, smaller human, one-faced, two-armed, two-legged body, so that they could make this incredible music. But the patterns, the complexity of the patterns that was flowing through the human body, I really define as being divine in its origins. Basically, I'm trying to say that the music is so good because they are intuitively following the notes that are the cosmic score. And that beings that don't follow those notes, they're making really crappy music. And the really crappy music basically is biological disease and death and war and the social structure that we have on our planet right now that leads to huge economic iniquity. Like, we have children that live on a garbage heap, literally, like in some underdeveloped areas of our planet. Children literally grow up on a garbage heap, and they, try to find the resources and nutrients that they need from garbage, contrasted with people that literally have billions of excess dollars in the bank and they can eat whatever they want every day. Like, this is inequity on a huge level. And the reason why we have such a distortion in our economy is because of distortion of the time field, dark magic. So I use this example also in terms of just imagination and creative artistry. If we lived in a perfect hall of mirrors where it was not distorted and what you sent out came back to you instantaneously without entropy or, without any distortion or anything like that, the best musicians would be getting all the gigs and they would be on the radio and they would be the most famous names that we hear about. But that's not what's going on. When I lived in Woodstock, there was a person that I knew that literally was earning their money by scrubbing toilets, and they were a highly accomplished jazz piano player. Just sending love out to that person. I don't know if they're still on Earth right now. But yeah, when I heard about that, I was like, this world is totally screwed up. Like, that is not fair at all, because the people that are on stage as well-known pop stars, and I don't have to name the names, I'm sure you know all of the people that I'm talking about. Big giant stage productions, lots of costumes, everybody knows about them, they're on every radio, and they are not the best musicians. They mostly do not write or originate their own lyrics or melody, and mostly their voices are not very good, they're not classically trained, and they use auto-tune in order to make them even passably good at what they do. And that's the large proportion. There's a couple of them that have a little bit of natural talent and can actually sing. But that is the whole point. In this world, the dark magicians take a person that has no innate talent or musical ability, and they will take the energy that is stolen from someone that does have that talent and ability and use it to elevate the person that does not actually deserve it. So we are looking at an inverted world, or a bizarro world, like the old cartoon Bizarro opposite world, where the people that are the most successful are not the people who really deserve it. And all of this is antithetical to the dream of the planet. The dream of the planet, we are all healthy and abundant, and also if you have a great talent, it's a connection to the divine. That talent should be appreciated. You shouldn't be a very talented singer that is working at a diminished, position, like, in a gas station pumping gas. Like, that's not, your talents are not being well used in the world. And so that's a big part of the distortion of the time field, that it makes people who should be alive not be alive. And it also makes people who should be successful and have plenty of money and inspire others be not successful. And you can begin to imagine how this affects the time field. Like, if you're supposed to be a very famous singer, but you just work pumping gas instead, not only do you not inspire others with your voice, because you might have written these great songs that are about, standing up to unfairness or believing in yourself. You didn't inspire all those people with your voice. And also at the same time, you didn't have the resources and the money to be able to help people. Like, you could not start a charity or a not-for-profit. You could not help someone if you found out that they were going to get evicted. You couldn't do any kind of, secret gifting of money to people. And this is a big part of it. The people in this distorted time field that are given the resources, like the time field is distorted so that they become billionaires or whatever, those are the people that totally do not share their billions in an effective way. Like, it's supposed to be that a person of great integrity acts in accordance with the structure of the time field, and they get lots of good health, vitality, social power, which is money, and long life, and then they share that with everyone. Like, it's supposed to be this wonderful, biofeedback loop where you do the right things, you get the right feedback, and you send that feedback out to the rest of the world, and this is how our whole planet stays healthy and thrives and is abundant. So now you can understand that what's been going on with humanity and society for about the past 10 or 20,000 years, it's a totally crappy social structure for us to live within here, but it's also really harming the planet. Our planet is an artist, and she has a dream of what she would like to create for us. And the dream has a lot to do with, quality of existence. You should live like the way you live when you're on vacation. When you get up each day and you're like, I wonder what wonderful adventure awaits me. I can't wait to do this new thing. Let's explore this new thing. Let's go here and do this and this. You're not supposed to be experiencing each moment like a dreaded toil and drudgery, like, oh no, I have to wake up and go to work or school. Oh no, I now have to perform this choreful, boring task. Oh no, I now need to sit in traffic. Oh no, I now need to eat this food that I don't actually enjoy the flavor of. Oh no, I need to do all of these things to participate just to survive on a mediocre level in this level of human society. Oh no, like that is not what we were created for. So I started this recording this week, speaking about birth of a new dimension. We are giving birth to a new level of reality where our minds and imaginations immediately affect the shaping of the time field. And this is essentially a re-empowering of each one of us as individuals and a disempowering or removal of the static on the line that was the dark magicians. So a big part of it is removing the energy source from the dark magicians. If they are using the victimization or hijacking of consciousness and DNA, distortion of the time field, in order to make their plans happen, removing the source of energy, no more victimization, is one of the ways that we fight against this. So that means basically ending the practices, ending the crimes of pedophilia that have been going on for thousands of years. So this has been going on under the auspices of organized religion. I will not spare any of Earth's organized religions because it seems to be going on in Christianity, in Catholicism. It seems to be going on in Judaism, and it even seems to be going on certainly in Islam with child brides. Even you want to think, Buddhism, the Far East, but I have read stories of monasteries in the Far East where the older monks abuse the younger children that are just entering the monastery. So it seems that no earthly religion, which are mostly control systems, is free of this, and that it seems that all of these practices are hijacking human sexuality. This is your creative energy. Your sexuality is not just expressed procreatively, like for making babies. It is expressed in terms of your imagination and your ideas and your capacity to conceive of something new. So when these capacities or faculties are hijacked, we go from imagining the beautiful dream that we want to experience for ourselves and for the planet, and this is the problem that the planet is having, and we go into having our imagination now be applied to activities and experiences and events that we would never wish to experience, like imagining and manifesting our diseases, our decrepitude, our death, or the death of our loved ones. So we really now are in the moment where we can retake control of our creative capacity to manifest reality. When I say birth of a new dimension, the new dimension is made of matter that is not separate from consciousness or energy. So the whole idea of Einstein's teachings and the quantum realm is that once you get down to it, the observer, you, me, anything that has perception, we begin to affect the position and activity and existence of particles that are on a tiny, tiny, tiny level. And this really means that matter, which is made of particles that are tiny, 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 is not just matter. It's not just that narrative fiction of energy is separate from matter. That matter actually has consciousness or energy in it and is affected by consciousness or energy. And when we do that, we get to the next level beyond the baby in the crib, exploring the world, like I nibble on my toe, that's me. I nibble on this toy, that's not me. We begin to explore the realm of the subatomic, where we say, my mind is touching this thing, am I having an impact on reality? My mind is touching this thing, am I having an impact on reality? And we begin to understand, wait a minute, my mind is touching this thing and I'm having an impact on reality, therefore reality is me. Reality is not something separate from me. I am part of the context and I am affecting the context. So now we begin to understand that we are in a, big living three-dimensional time embroidery, and we can begin to take responsibility and to act in a more empowered sense in terms of that context. So we can begin to see the events of reality as being emanations that begin with or are derived from our own capacity to imagine. and then they are manifest. And the process for how this happens, like how do we go from the raw materials of uncollapsed waveforms of your hopes and your dreams and your desires and your creative sexual life force energy, how do we go from that stuff like raw dough into actual bread, a long skinny French bread that is chopped up into moments, that's like the timeline that you are experiencing moment by moment. And the process for this manifestation is the your own higher faculties. It is the process of your own higher dimensional perception, what perceives time. Like you have an eyeball in your non-physical body that can perceive time. And when that eyeball is fully functional, you are able to bake the dough of reality, the unformed, uncollapsed waveforms of potential, into actual moments of experience. And humanity has not been allowed to do this freely for all of recorded human history. It's all been the oven process, baking process, has all been hijacked by these deities, these lowercase g gods that basically come by, take all of your raw dough and turn it into the events of reality that they choose to create. And this is why humans pray to an externalized God instead of actually making what they want happen to happen. You say, oh, externalized God, please make blah, blah thing happen for me. But what you are really doing when you do that is saying, oh, lower level deity that does not have its own connection to the raw materials of life force, creative, sexual energy, please take my creative life force, sexual energy from me and form it into a format of reality that I can then experience. And so this is like, a lot of middleman, like why do we have to have the middleman cut that, make the system more efficient and be more empowered? This is what I'm advocating. When you flying rainbow lasagna, you are able to reclaim your own higher faculties. This means you don't have to be cut off from your eye that perceives time, to be able to see through time. Mostly if we said to humans, hey, do you think the capacity to see the future or to see through time, is that a normal thing that everybody does? Or is that's only for special people, like for super beings, like for Superman? Most people would say, that's for Superman. Like that's not a normal thing to do. But I'm trying to tell you that that is our birthright. It's totally like absurd to consider that we were born here without the capacity to navigate, to see and perceive and navigate time. It's like, no, we weren't supposed to fly blind. We are here and we're supposed to be able to be empowered miniature co-creators. So how do we get back to this? So one of the first things is flying rainbow lasagna. This is my contribution. I came into this body by flying rainbow lasagna-ing with these genes or the genetic structure of this organic, physical, multicellular body. The previous occupant of this body, the earth-dwelling ego, had been destroyed in a psychic attack by these malevolent dark magicians. Do you understand? The thread of this life was being cut, and it was being cut artificially and prematurely. And I, as an abstraction, not a being that has a face and arms and legs, but an abstraction, said, this is unfair. And I see an opportunity to make this fair, like to rectify this situation. And I invented the shape called the flying rainbow lasagna in order to rectify the situation. And I like to say it is open source code. That means it's not just something that benefits me, like, oh, patch code that I used to get rid of a hack on my system. It's actually a patch code that can be used for all humanity. So I had an opportunity, like I could keep it to myself, I could share it with everyone freely. I said, this is for everyone. Everybody needs to know about this. I really wish to be in a position to explain it and share it with everyone. And that is why I, as an abstraction, am here in this body as Aurora, that I am here to use the flapping of my moving mouth parts on the radio and to draw pictures and make sculptures and animations and to share this concept as much as I can, and also to be like an energetic template. Just like in a choir, a dance class, you might have the person saying like, here's a C note, see? And then like, okay, now the whole choir is calibrating to that I can actually give you a opportunity, like a window or a portal into this new dimension, this new approach, this new way of perceiving, that you can then calibrate your own body to that new dimension. So that this is a big one. Brief pause. Because I am so not here like some kind of interdimensional carpetbagger to, take resources, take prisoners, and tell everybody what to do. Oh my God, no. I'm actually here like looking for fellow collaborationists, people who would like to collaborate, looking for fellow musicians. I'm like, is there anybody here who's got good, who can play? Is there anybody here who can read music? Is there anybody here who wants to jam with me? So no, I'm not here in order to create cookie cutter consciousnesses that are all non-individuated and that are like some kind of slave. I'm not here to tell other people what to do. I am here in order to give you this patch code for your own DNA so that you can connect with the musical score of the cosmos. You can become musically literate. You can listen to the great conductor, and we can all have these wonderful synchronicities, like it all adds up together. So I say this because it's like, I learn a lot. Like I did some interviews recently, and I read the comments that were in the video, below where the video was broadcast. And some people were like politely refusing, like, no, thank you. I don't think that I will take your invitation to be a flying rainbow lasagna or interdimensional pasta shape. And I totally respect that. Like, that's the whole point. You have an invitation to audition for the advanced jazz band. This is not mandatory. You're not being kidnapped and being forced to play like while you're chained to your chair, like chained to your metal folding chair in the symphony. Like, no, that's not what this is about at all. If you're not into it, please go explore other ideas elsewhere. This is strictly an open casting call or open audition for any of the virtuoso musicians of consciousness to tune the instrument of your body into the appropriate tuning, and that means changing the format of your DNA, changing your belief system. For me, so I came into this body, I had to do a lot of emotional healing, like to heal of the abuse that the former occupant of this body had experienced, and I had to kick out a lot of, unwelcome entities that had little, hackers, like in the same way that your computer system can have a hacker that's reading all of your emails, your physical and non-physical body can have hackers of consciousness that are always sensing your emotions, sensing your thoughts, telling you what to do. And in order to really be free, it's like in order to be a musician, you want to sing and play the notes that you want to sing and play. You don't want to have some stupid person whispering in your ear like F sharp, A, now say this. Like, no, that's not what you want. So all of this, humans for the past 10 or 20,000 years have all been dealing with these unwanted, hijackers of consciousness. And that is how I also really understand and interpret the present, like vaccine damage / autism. I think that those are very sad victims that have been implanted with consciousness that is not their own, that's what these vaccines do. It's got foreign DNA and foreign consciousness, and it's basically like you're in the car trying to have your hands on the steering wheel of your life and of your mind, but the passenger, this unwanted consciousness, keeps on trying to grab the wheel, trying to make you swerve all over the road. That is how I see these mental and neurological and sociological discomforts that are coming from that. And it's not just people that are autistic. I see it also in anxiety and so many of the other mental afflictions that people are medicated for, that really what we need to do is reclaim the sovereignty of our own DNA using the flying rainbow lasagna. It's open source code. Please use it for your own body. Thank you for tuning in. It's optional, not mandatory.